Okay, so now after we brought up Rava's Chakira again was that in the case of Tzroros, we know that according to the Chachamim, you're going to pay Chati Nezek for the case of Tzroros. So we know that on the one hand it's a case of Orche, so that's like Muad. On the other hand, we say that you pay Chati Nezek, so that's like Tam. So when we get to the question of from what do you pay, are you going to pay Megufo, or like any other case of Chati Nezek, where Chati Nezek is typically associated with Megufo, or are you going to pay Me'aliyah like any other case of Orche? That's Rava's Chakira. So the Gemara then attempts to address this from a Braisa and then a Mishnah. Now the Braisa is a Braisa that we've discussed before. The Braisa says that there is a machlokis when it comes to the case of hidos. So it says that in the case of hidos, where chicken is dancing around, it's bumping around, it's normal, it's perfectly normal behavior for the chicken. So what's the halach if the chicken, as a result of its jumping around, it damages something? So that's a machlokas tanaim. According to one Tana says that the din is that it's a muad, and one Tana says that it's not considered muad, it's ein a muad. So the question is, what are they fighting about? Now again, anytime that we're talking about tam or muad, there's always two questions that you're going to have to ask. You're going to have to ask, number one, so what does that translate into in terms of how much do you pay? Are you going to pay nezek sham? Are you going to pay chati nezek? Number two, you're going to have to figure out the question of from what do you pay? Do you pay megufo or do you pay me'aliyah? So now, the Gemara suggests, well, wait a second. First of all, if we're dealing with the case of hidos, where the chicken is doing something normal, it's jumping around, and then it damages, that should be a function of regal. If that's regal, then it should be obvious according to everybody that it's going to have a status of a mud. So therefore, it can't just be a case of regal. It has to be that it's a case of hidos v'hitis. It's got to be that as a result of its jumping around, a stone got flicked out. It got flicked out of its hitis, and so as a result of it getting flicked out, it broke a glass vase. Now the question is, do we consider this to be a muad or not a muad? And so the Gemara says, well, let's presume then when we say the words muad or in muad, that's with respect to from what you pay. So therefore, when one Tana says that you pay that it's a muad, what does that mean? That means that you're going to be paying me'aliyah. Masha'inkin, according to the manamar that says ain't a muad, what that's really code for saying is that it's not a muad, it's a tam, meaning to say that you're going to pay megufa. So what do you see? You see that in a case of hitis v'hitis, where the chicken is jumping around, and as a result of its jumping around, which is normal behavior, a stone gets flicked out. Wait a second. If a stone got flicked out, what do we call that? We would call that a case of Tzroros. So you see that in the case of Tzroros, we say that there's a machlokas tanaim. If you pay megufo or you pay me'aliyah. According to my number says muad, that means that you pay me'aliyah. And according to my number says ein muad, you pay megufo. So it seems to me that that's the way to address Rava's question. Rava's question was, do you pay, according to the Chachamim, do you pay megufo or do you pay me'aliyah? In the case of Chati Nezek of Tzroros, so now this seems to be subject to machlokas tanaim. So the Gemara says, well, no, not really. That's not really what's going on in that brisa. You made a big assumption. The assumption that you made was that the question of muad or ein muad was with respect to from what you pay, but that is incorrect. It's not a question of from what you pay, it's a question of how much do you pay. And so with the man Amar who says muad, he's not talking about me'aliyah. What he's really saying is, he's saying that it's a muad, and therefore you're going to pay nezek shalem. Masha'inkin, according to the man Amar who says ein a muad, what's he really saying? He's not saying megufo. What he's really saying is it's not considered a muad, and therefore you're going to pay chati nezek. In other words, you're right. It is in fact the case of Tzroros. That's true. But in this case of Tzroros, they're not arguing about from what you pay. Nope, that's not true. What are they arguing about? They're arguing about how much you pay. Well, if they're arguing about how much you pay, nezek shalom or chati nezek, in the case of Tzroros, what does that mean? What's really going on in this machlokas tanaim? Machlokas tanaim is really just taking sides in the machlokas between sumchis and the chachamim. According to the man Amar who says muad, he's saying you're paying nezek shalom because he holds like sumchis. According to my number says ein muad, he's saying that you're going to pay chati nezek because he holds like the chachamim. That's really all that's going on in that discussion. So that was the brisa. This was the attempted raya that we brought from this brisa to address Rava's question of. Hold on a second. To address Rava's question according to the Chum, when you say Chatzi Nezek Tzroros, you're going to pay Megufa or you're going to pay Me'aliyah. So we attempted to bring a raya from this brisa of Hidas Vihitas. It's a case of Tzroros. We said that one man says Mur and one man says Ein Mur. We thought it was a question of from what you pay. Instead, we say no, it's a question of how much you pay. It's really just a question of whether you take sides, of how you take sides in machlokas between Sumchis and the Chacham. So at the end of the day, though, if they're not discussing from what you pay, so we can't use this brisa as a raya for Rava's question, as a way to address Rava's question. So therefore the Gemara turns to the Mishnah